Another video today. Today we're going to do a guide replacement video. Show you the steps involved in replacing a guide. This is an old rod. It's the easiest one I could find to do this. So let me zoom in a little. I don't know how well you can see the color here, but it's a dark blue. Kind of almost a purplish blue. And the blank is black. So there's a gold underwrap on it, which more often than not I leave on there. If it stays on there intact, I'll leave it. If not, I'll see if I can just get that color a little bit more defined. I guess not. So the first thing I got to do is find a color that's close to it. A lot of these older rods, most of the overwraps are black, which is obviously pretty easy. This one, like I said, is a dark blue. I've got two colors that are pretty close. I've got one that's a little bit darker, and that's this one. I don't know if you can tell. And I've got a slightly bluer one. So one's a little bit darker than the other. I believe I'm going to go with the lighter one. It's going to be so close you won't really be able to see the difference. More often than not, that's the case. So we'll go with the lighter one, and we'll start the first step, which is heating up the old clear coat and stripping the guide. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is heat up the old flex coat. I've got this craft heater. I'm going to heat it up till it gets rubbery enough and I can pick that inside thread out and start unthreading it. You start to see a little discoloration, that's when it's time to try it. Alright, I got the inside thread, and there we go. A little too hard. That indicates it got a little cold on me. You got to heat it up a little bit more. It should be ready to come off the rest of the way. That should do it. Okay, it's off. It's a little discolored here. You can see some of the flex coat. There's the last piece of thread. And you can see this is gold paint on here. This isn't exactly thread, so I'm going to underwrap it with a gold thread, just so it looks a little bit neater. And it's always better to underwrap guides whenever you can. Protects the blank. So I'll get rid of the other wrap and sand it down, and we'll be back. Okay, we got the guide off, and this is a cheap blank. It was painted, the gold was painted on, and in addition to that, the black was painted on. It's a black blank. So it got quite a bit scuffed up. So what I usually do in a case like this, you can tell it's an inexpensive blank because the guides for starters and the fact that it was painted. anytime paint is used instead of thread, it usually indicates an inexpensive blank. So I'm going to use a size A thread, which is a very small diameter thread, and just rewrap the base of the blank. It's easier than coloring it. This will give us a fresher start, and then I'm going to go over that with the gold, over the black with the gold in the areas where I need it. So once we get the wrap started, we can trim this excess off. Okay. And we'll just take a minute to wrap this right up. Okay, so now we got a nice clean base, and it's all thread, so the rod's protected. We come back, I'll start with the gold. Okay, the black's all wrapped. As you can see, I taped the old guide back. I'm going to use the old guide for demonstration purposes, just putting it back on. I taped the guide temporarily back in place so that I could make some marks. I'll zoom in and see if you can see them. I made some marks for where I want the gold to go. I don't want to see any gold in here. Originally there was just a little strip of gold outside of the original, so I'm going to underwrap right over the black thread with some gold next. We'll do that in one sec. Let me zoom in and see if you can see the, I'm not sure if you can see them or not, but there's a couple of spots on there. So we'll come back, I'll get the gold set up and we'll get that going. Okay, we'll get the gold started. And I don't know if you can see it on the video, but the gold thread's a lot more vibrant and shiny than just paint would be, so it always looks a lot nicer, even though it would be easy to just slap some gold paint on there. This is a much better way to do it. I'm not too concerned with how tight the wraps are or anything like that. The only place you're going to see this gold is at the very end of the wrap. So I'm just wrapping it this far along so that the thickness is the same on the blank when I put the guide over it. Put our loop in, make a few turns. Set this one, and then I'll shut it off and do the other one, and we'll come back. Okay, be right back. Okay, we got the gold done, and as you can see, I got the guide taped back over temporarily, and we're going to start the overwrap. And we're going to start just a smidge, just going to leave a little bit of that gold showing, because that's kind of how it was. If I was repairing this rod, I would match it exactly, which is what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to make it as similar as I can to the way it was, even though you don't have another guide to compare it to, because the other half of this pull is nowhere to be found. But it had just had that painted gold underneath, and it was just a smidge of it showing. And I can see that this color is going to match up pretty well, very similar to what we had. Tricky part about overwrapping is, especially going over a metallic like we did here, you got to get your overwraps very tight. I'm going to burnish them in once I get this thing wrapped down. Burnishing them flattens the thread out a little, spreads it out, makes it a little wider. Jumped. Push these together a little bit. And because this is A thread, it's kind of thin. On the heavier rods, I like to use a C or a D thread. But the only size I had in this color was A. I'm going to double wrap it. I'm just going to go back over it. It'll help fill in some of those gaps. And make it a little stronger. We'll put the loop in again. A lot of static electricity in here. Let's see if we can flatten her out a little bit. Okay, try to zoom in on that because I know that they're both dark colors and might be a little tricky to see, but what we've got is pretty much an exact duplicate of what we had. And you can see I went a little further with the black, just because the rod. If I was redoing this rod, I'd probably add some black to the flex coat and flex coat the entire rod, get rid of a lot of these nicks and dings. But because the rod was painted where the guide was and there was no under wrap, it scratched it up, so I had to get the color back in it. So that's why we under wrapped it with the black. Okay. Going to finish it up, and then the next step will be the flex coat. Okay, we're ready to flex coat. I've got it on my drying rig. Just start flex coating it up. Flex coat's a little thick because it's kind of cold today. Working in the basement. It's a little chilly here. But the flex coat is self-leveling. That's why it's spinning. It helps it settle. It takes about 4 hours to set and takes overnight to dry fully. So we just goop it on there pretty much any old way we can for starters. It's because it's cold, it's going to have some air bubbles in it, which is common. And I will take the alcohol lamp to it, and it'll lance a lot of those bubbles out. Take them all out. Normally, if I was just changing the guide and I didn't have to underwrap it in black, I wouldn't have to flex coat underneath the guide seat. But if you remember, we put new threads underneath to get the color back with the blank, so I need to put flex coat under there as well. And it's important, if you have a rod at home that the threads are discoloring, you're getting a whitish discoloration underneath the flex coat, it's almost always because this gap right here under the guide feet isn't filled in. May look a little sloppy, but if you do it right and you get the flex coat into all those areas, you won't have that problem. It's when that seal fails and water gets underneath the flex coat, gets between the flex coat and the thread, that you start getting that fading, discolored look. So I try to make sure I got that flex coat under there real well. This is the the thread, you can see as it gets wet it darkens a little bit, not a lot, because this thread is color preserved. They have thread that is not color preserved that becomes almost opaque when you put the flex coat on it, but this pretty much maintains the same or very close color to how it looks dry. It may, like I said, it may look a little lumpy right now because I'm just slapping it on. It really doesn't matter how you get it on. When it's all on there and everything looks good, I'll level it out a little bit. But as I said, I don't have to go crazy because it's like the consistency of honey. So it's a little tough to brush on, but over the course of spinning overnight, it'll all settle. If I put a big blob of it in one place, it'll drip off and find its way to level out. Okay, again, I can see a lot of air bubbles on it. I don't know if you can. I don't know how good a quality this video is, but that's about it. This would normally probably get 2 thinner coats. I'm laying it on real heavy because I'm just going to do 1 coat because it's a demonstration. I don't want to waste the time or the flex coat because this rod's not going to be fishing. But I should be able to get it on. This is high build flex coat, so I should be able to get it on heavily enough. The lamp will also help it level out quite a bit. We'll fire that up. And once that lamp is ready to use, we'll get right back. Okay. You got the alcohol lamp, and we're just going to lightly wave it underneath here. And the air bubbles show up a little white. Again, I doubt you'll see them. They're very tiny. And sometimes they dry out by themselves, but once in a while they don't, so I try to burn them off whenever I can. You might be able to see that it's starting to droop in places because I'm thinning it. The heat thins it out, and I'll just sweep it along back and forth with the brush, and again it's gonna find its own level here. It'll all level itself out over time. It'll be spinning overnight, and tomorrow morning should be done. I think that's about it. Looks pretty good. I don't see any lumps in it. And you might be able to see some of it dripping off. As I said, I put more on than it needs. Put a very heavy coat on just so I can get a nice sheen with just 1 coat. So I don't mind a little bit of it dripping off, and again, it won't dry lumpy. It'll level out. Okay, that's that. So I guess we'll come take a look at it tomorrow morning. It'll be all done. But you can see, I don't know if you can tell, there's 1 original wrapping still left on there, and the color is pretty much spot on from the original. I don't know if I can get them both in there, but there's the original, and there's the and you can see the slight yellow metallic strip on the end that was paint from the factory, and now We have a gold one that's in thread. Alright, we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, welcome to the next day. She's still spinning, but it's good and dry. Let me see if I can zoom in and get a little closer picture here. I don't know how the colors are going to show on this, but, and as I said, I would give this 2 coats normally, but because you can see a little bit of the thread work, but for the most part it's a spitting image of the original. There's a piece of original wrapping right there, so you can see the color. That's the old, and that's the new. And again, it's all thread instead of paint, so it's sealed, so no air can get in there. Okay, so that's that. I'll look for more videos in the future.